I'm here today with Niina Kuukka, who's in San Jose, and she does counseling as well as neurofeedback in order to help her clients with the mental health issues they come to her for. So I thought it'd be really interesting to kind of get your take on all that and how you're a little different and how you help your clients. So can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you into this journey of, helping people with their mental health and then maybe specifically neurofeedback after that?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of it has been inspired by my own journey, as many providers often have, that I kind of come from my own background of experiencing like anxiety and depression, and just working through earlier traumatic experiences. So just kind of based off of that, at the time back then, I didn't even really know I had anxiety and depression, but I always had this like calling to become a therapist and go get my master's. And eventually I did go that route. And now in hindsight, I realize a lot of it was to figure out kind of how to help myself. And then that's also what I'm really passionate about now is being able to offer different strategies and techniques that have really helped me to also help my clients be able to heal, from their traumas and, really reduce the anxiety and depression to where they're feeling really great most of the time and able to really build a life that feels really good for them in terms of their relationships, their jobs, and just being able to live a little bit more freely like they really want to, as opposed to being kind of stuck or weighed down by some of their mental health challenges that are going on.
Right. How long have you been helping people this way?
So I have been practicing since 2018. So more so starting with just the counseling. And then as I was going through, becoming a counselor, working with clients, that's also when I found out about neurofeedback and went to go try neurofeedback for myself. And I found it really helpful. And so I've been doing neurofeedback with people for about the last 3 or 4 years now.
Okay. So do you almost always use neurofeedback in addition to counseling, or is it kind of two separate things?
So it's a really individualistic process. But I honestly feel like the clients that see the most improvements are ones that are doing a combination of the two. So my practice is called Brain Mind Wellness. And I really like to look at it as the integration of the two, right? So we have neurofeedback that's really addressing the electrical activity of the brain. And then we have the therapy aspect that is really focusing on the more psychological process of the mind, right? Because especially all of us have been through negative life experiences. We all have some negative beliefs, limiting beliefs about ourselves, to different varying degrees. And those can also kind of limit the progress that we can make in with the neurofeedback, especially trauma is really my specialty, and I love helping clients heal from trauma, especially when we have present triggers in the moment. So it could be a situation or someone that we're dealing with. Those can kind of trigger the feelings from earlier life situations. So for example, I have a client who their parent was highly unpredictable, and then now in the present they have a coworker who's highly unpredictable. So whenever they're around that coworker, they get really anxious and tense, and they kind of start spiraling around different thoughts about this person and thoughts about themselves in relation to them, right? So in that situation, that's a good example of how our past gets triggered in the present, and to really work through those, that's where the therapy can come in and be really helpful. So doing the combination of the two is what I really love to do. Some clients are just purely, they just really need the electrical activity in the brain to be addressed. And those clients see really great benefits from just doing the neurofeedback sessions. So it's either when clients come in and they have a history of difficult things happening in their life that seem related to what's going on now in the present. That's often when I would recommend that they do some counseling along with the neurofeedback.
Gotcha. Okay. So, can you explain to somebody that might not be familiar with neurofeedback, could you explain what that is and how it works, how it helps?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so neurofeedback is really cool because it's actually just looking at the activity that your brain is engaging in throughout the day. So there's different, brainwave patterns, and that's really what it's all based off of, is the electrical activity can basically be understood as what our brain waves are. So if you see the graphs that are showing little waves across, basically we have higher, faster waves, which are like our beta waves. We have slower ones that are delta related to our sleep, and then some in between. So the starting point of neurofeedback is doing a brain map, which is basically recording all of the brainwave activity. So then essentially we get this picture of how your brain is producing different activity across the different areas. So I like to explain neurofeedback, like really fundamentally, we're looking at, are certain areas of your brain either overproducing certain activities, maybe it's underproducing, and then that can be, correlated with certain difficulties or different symptoms. So getting a look at that brain map really helps us identify what areas of your brain could use a little help in terms of just promoting better efficiency with the activity that is being produced there. So then from that brain map, that's how we use the sessions, is basically sensors are attached to certain areas of the brain that are reading the activity, and then you're getting feedback through the screen or through audio, essentially trying to either reward the brain for what it's doing, so trying to promote that and tell it, yes, encourage that, keep promoting this. Let's say if it's a calmer pattern or more focused pattern, then the brain is going to get more rewards through the tones or the videos, versus on the flip side, if it's producing, an inattentive pattern, maybe an anxious pattern, depressed pattern, then the feedback that the brain will get will be a more what they call the negative feedback. So it's a way of the brain starting to learn, oh, when I get this, I actually get it can look at it as a negative consequence. So that is going to help the brain basically deter it from producing more of that pattern over time.
Right. So when you say over time, that it's kind of like working out, right? It's not an instant fix. And some people think, well, so I need to go do this for like forever. It's like, no, it's like a few months, right? Or a couple of times a week. It's kind of what most providers seem to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of, without that, if they have issues with the electrical activity in their brain, then I don't know, like, what would you say is kind of like with counseling and therapy? I mean, that can take years sometimes, right? But if you can collapse those time frames into a month or two, that's pretty powerful,
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that? Yeah.
I do. Yeah. And I do feel like neurofeedback really fast tracks things, right? Because we're dealing with the electrical activity. And I would also say it depends on the type of counseling that someone is doing. So, for example, cognitive behavior therapy, it has a lot of great skills involved for people to learn. But what it's helping us think about our thoughts and then trying to think differently, which for some people that works great. But the way that I look at it is it's kind of a surface level of things that we're thinking the way we think because of a lot deeper mechanisms going on. So the type of therapy that I incorporate with the neurofeedback, I do something called EMDR, which is eye movement sensitization and reprocessing. So a lot of our negative thinking patterns and our negative beliefs can come from earlier experiences, especially when we're kids. And, when up until like age 7, we're in delta, theta dominant brainwave state. So it's not till we're about 8 that we start developing alpha and beta waves more dominantly. So that is indicating we're at that stage, we can start moving into more logical thought process. But before then, we're basically in an imaginary kind of state that we can't really analyze things that we can as an adult. So when we look back at our childhood and we're like, that shouldn't have been such a big deal, this small thing that happened. But from the kid's perspective, it is a big deal just because of the way that the brain is functioning. So that's what I really love about EMDR, is it's really helping the brain tap into some of those deeper experiences for why we think the way we do. And it really helps people have more awareness of why they're thinking the way they do. And I feel like awareness is a large percentage of the battle, maybe like 80%. And then once you have the awareness, you can take a step back and evaluate things and then be able to learn some strategies and some tips on how to respond to those situations differently.
Right. I had one of my clients was telling me about helping somebody with addiction. And it really made a big difference. But the reason it made the big difference is because this person that was getting the help said that it allowed him to stop and think before he made that decision to engage in that behavior, right? So it kind of gives you that power to, be aware, just like you're saying, So I think that's another aspect of neurofeedback that makes it work. And when you combine that with things like EMDR and what you're talking about, I can imagine it's very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that all the time, that clients, they're starting to have more awareness when their attention is starting to shift, or when they're starting to go down a negative self-critical, like self-talk spiral. So I think like that is one of the big benefits, as well as with certain neurofeedback protocols, we can actually help the brain process trauma and things like that on a deeper level as well, to be actually releasing it from the nervous system. Because there's, if anyone has read Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? Is trauma is stored deeper in our memory networks, in the cellular parts of our body. So that's often why just talking about it in talk therapy is not enough. We need more versions of talk therapy that bring us down into the deeper layers. So EMDR does that. I also do internal family systems. I do guided meditations. So just a variety of things that help actually take us out of just our conscious thinking process. And I think that's also what's really cool about neurofeedback is it's working in a subconscious way that we don't necessarily have conscious control over. So the more that we can kind of skirt around the conscious defenses of the mind, the better we're going to be able to do some good work that people are going to see some results from.
Right. That's awesome. So one of the things that a lot of people in the neurofeedback field talk about is how most of the mental health problems people have, they're not chemical imbalances, they're electrical imbalances, right? Which seems like the whole medical industry has gotten, very out of balance on that, right? It's very focused on the chemical side of it. So when somebody comes to you, I imagine sometimes they're already on medications and things like that. How do you help them with that? Is that something that you help them wean off, or what happens typically?
Yeah, so it's definitely, I would say, people that are coming in with medications, right? I'm not a psychiatrist, so coordinating with their psychiatrist, because they're really the ones that will monitor like the tapering off. But I definitely have clients who are able to do that while balancing with the neurofeedback. So as we do more neurofeedback, I am usually encouraging clients to be in contact with their psychiatrist about tapering off medications. And especially if they're starting to notice that they're feeling better as we're going throughout the process, being able to taper that slowly over time, because with any medication, right, there is the benefits that you will get, and there's also the negative side effects. And I've worked with many clients who get put on a medication, and then 5-10 years down the road, they're still on it. And there was never a discussion about why they're still on it or what the plan for it is. And when they come to me actually talking about some of the things they're experiencing, when we look at the medication, oftentimes the side effects, the negative things they're experiencing are listed on the side effects there. So it's really hard to tell, well, would you have this if you weren't on this medication, right? So that's also being able to get off medication that you don't really need to be on, right? I know some medication is justified and people need to be on that longer term. But if you're one of the people that are like, I don't really know why I'm on this, or if I need to be on this at this point, I encourage people to really consider getting off of it, so then we can have a clearer picture of what is really going on for you without having the medication side effects as a potential contributing factor.
Yeah, it's kind of my own personal experience. Was my oldest son had ADHD severely. It's a complete wingnut as a teenager. And so he got put on medication, and we didn't want to do that. But at the time, because, a number of years ago, there was no other recourse. There's no other choice. There wasn't any, I didn't know anything about neurofeedback, but it did start me into the whole thing about the brain. We took courses on it, wife and I, we tried to figure this out. If there would have been something like this out there, we would have been on it like that, right?
Mhm.
But they put him on Ritalin for a while, and then they wanted to put him on something else, and it was like, we're just not going to do it. We'll deal with it, right? That's
Yeah.
when I started using them brain entrainment for him. It actually helped, right? And so that was kind of my journey, but I've seen with a lot of providers how, they'll, a client will come in with their child and he's been on this medication, then this one. And then to combat the effects of these ones, he went on this one. And
Right.
pretty soon they're on 4 or 5 different medications and they still have the problem, right?
Mhm.
So I think it sometimes just having an understanding of all that can make such a big difference for parents,
Yeah.
right? And it's not just that way to ADHD, of course, but that's just an example that I thought about. Do you have like a pivotal moment, where that really solidified your belief in neurofeedback and its effectiveness? Can you think of, like, was there a moment that happened, or a case that happened with, or anything like that?
I don't know if it's been one specific case. I know definitely from my own experience, but I feel like it just repeatedly keeps happening after time and time again, right? With all the clients that I'm working with. I know there was one client who they came in and they had a very like complex trauma history, and they have tried everything under the sun in terms of other things that they like modalities, therapy, they tried medication. And then within a certain protocol that we were using, the alpha theta protocol, after one session, they were saying it felt like the clouds had parted and that they were feeling like better than they'd ever felt before.
Right.
Like recently I had a client that was coming in for like migraines and kind of physical related things. And within the first like 5 sessions, they noticed the migraines were better, the light sensitivity was reduced, even their grip strength was getting better, that they told me, which that was kind of like just a cool, like, it's just a really good example of you have no idea what can improve when we're helping regulate the brain function more effectively.
Well, it kind of makes sense, right? Because the brain controls pretty much every aspect of our life,
Yeah.
you know, including things like a lot of chronic pain and
Mhm.
strength and coordination and that kind of thing, right? I think there's quite a few athletes that are now using it.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes there's some branches in the military that have used it quite a bit, so there's a lot of evidence out there today. I mean, there's thousands of studies, and I think it's just getting more kind of popular, might not be the right word, but it's getting more accepted, right?
Mhm.
But it's weird how it hasn't been accepted, to the level that it should be, because it's been effective for decades,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, but I guess there's not as much profit in it for,
Well,
the
yeah,
powers
that
that be,
gets
right?
into a whole political
Conspiracy theory.
question around big pharma, right? And
Yeah,
people are making plenty of money off medication and for not really helping people fully heal, but keeping people on medication instead.
yeah, yeah. It's sad. But I guess that's why we're doing this, is to try and get the word out there and get people to understand, right?
Mhm.
So do you have any, like, I don't know, maybe a memorable success story, of somebody that, it kind of blew you away? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah. So I have had a client who came in with pretty like severe attention-based ADHD symptoms. And similar, they had tried all the medications. He was getting in trouble at school pretty regularly. And they decided to go the home unit route just because with ADHD, the amount of sessions you're going to need is typically higher, right? And with a home unit, people can be doing more frequent sessions from home. And I think within like the first couple of weeks, first month that we were doing sessions, I mean, this kiddo was already able to sit and do his homework, wasn't getting in trouble at school anymore. like tension at home was really reduced. And I think though what was so impactful for me about that story was just seeing like the relief in the parents, and just, because mom is very, very emotional about the fact that like, oh my God, this is actually helping and working. Whereas they had tried so many other things and it just felt like kind of hopeless. So I think like that's also what I love about neurofeedback, is just being able to give people hope that it's like, well, if you haven't tried this yet, then you haven't tried everything. So
Right.
it's always just a good success story that has stuck with me. And even,
Nice.
months later after treatment, he's still doing really well.
That's awesome. I guess that's the kind of thing that keeps you going, right? Those kind
Mhm.
of stories, right? So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. So if somebody wants to engage with you, what's your process? Like, do they call you? Do they, there's a scheduling count? Like, how do people, engage? What happens?
So the best way is to go to the website, brainmindwellness.com, and you can click on the schedule consultation link there and just schedule a free 20-minute consultation so that we can chat, just to get to know a little bit more about you, what you're experiencing, whether neurofeedback would be something that sounds like it would be a good fit for you to explore. And then we would kind of talk about a plan that makes most sense for that person from there. So whether that's coming in for the initial brain map or potentially starting with some therapy first, right? It's such an individualistic process, that it is often really tailored as we go for each person. And even after we start neurofeedback, right? It's a continual reassessment on how they're progressing, potentially making adjustments to the protocols that we're using in the sessions. So the best way would be starting with that free consultation, and then we make a plan from there.
Sweet. Okay. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Just that, just going back to that sense of hope, right? That I can fully attest to how neurofeedback and EMDR have really helped me, and especially the combination of the two, and how it's really helping a lot of my other clients, and that it's really worth taking the time to invest that time in yourself and dedicating the time towards doing neurofeedback or doing therapy to help you. If you think about the time you can take to spend on that versus the rest of your life, to me, it's so worth it. And I know some people spend years and years trying to figure things out. I have clients within, I want to say even 6 months to a year, we're totally done with everything because of how quickly neurofeedback and especially with the therapy EMDR works. So I think like that's my thing, that I just want to give people hope and inspire them to just, if there's things that you're still struggling with, there's always more modalities to try. And a lot of the times it's just finding out what's the right one that's really going to work for you.
Right. It's hard to overstate, right? Like if you think about the month or 6 months or however long it takes to get, that really strong brain, right? If you do that, it changes the rest of your life,
Mm-hmm.
in all aspects, whether it's, business, performance, your relationships, or just your own mental well-being. It's very hard to overstate that, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I really appreciate, people like yourself that go out there every day and, help people this way. I think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to link your site so this will be on YouTube and it'll be on our All About Neurofeedback site. And you also have a page there where everything will be linked up. So it'll be very easy to find you if that's where they find you, or go directly to your site, like you said, and that'll also be linked. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.